Earth Elder Myra L. Jackson has held a diverse array of hefty careers in engineering, holographic organizational development, and academia. While those experiences might seem divergent from her deep mystical roots, she found that her early training in electrical theory, physics, and music informed her inner and outer life. Today, that training provides useful metaphorical language in discussing the physics of now that points to our intrinsic bond with nature. Today, Myra carries the title of Diplomat of the Biosphere with a primary focus on transforming our societal relationship with nature through public policy approaches that recognize nature's intrinsic rights to exist whole along with her life forms. In listening to the earth, Myra strives to fully realize the aspirational premise of the luminous thread she carries. This is the big missing aspect for a lot of people. And what we're talking about is how humans are an aspect of nature and how it informs us and our actions day to day and our work in the world. So I'd love to start to just reference, because I believe most people aren't working from that reference, not in our industrialized society, of how we are nature. Like, how did you remember? I feel like most of us forget.
Mm. Well, you know how they say that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it really is the question
Yeah.
because before I was cognitively aware, I realized the things that stood out in my life as touchstones were already a conveyance that was ensuring that I would remember this connection. And so, first, I would have to say that I never lost it and that I had the great fortune of having a grandmother who ignited it in such a lived way, meaning it was grounded. It was who and what she was, and you could see her connection to the earth had information that most people could not provide. I mean, I didn't have another person that's such a reference for being able to read and know herself in a comfortable way in nature. And the way that played out was when I was very young, my grandmother came and visited us in San Diego from Michigan. And we were walking around the canyons around our house. And things I saw every day looked very different when I was walking and hearing my grandmother narrate what she was seeing. And it opened my eyes. It took me on a journey that has never ended. And I'll give you an example. We had canyons surrounding us. We were on a hill. And yet, in walking with my grandmother, she said, this whole land was underwater. I said, Grandmother, how do you know that? Here, the ocean's way over there. We can see it. And she said, Dot, which she would call all of us who were the women in the family, Dot, look down. And I looked down, not expecting to see any evidence of this being underwater. And what did I find? She said, just rub your hand on the soil. And there were seashells all over the hill. So this would go on and play out in many ways. She would know when the weather was coming, and she often used her tongue to give information about when we would see rain on a full sunny day. And San Diego, you have 72 degrees of weather, usually day in, day out, although that is changing with climate. And so I just learned so much by the way that she walked in the world. And I was really fortunate later in my life because by this time I was around 6 years old. And I couldn't wait to have her again because by that time I figured out what my questions were. But I was reading everything. I knew that these bodies that we had could have access to information that wasn't visible to us. So if you
Beautiful.
want to know the beginning of feeling connection to nature, it was through being with my grandmother and her lived experience, her narration of what she was seeing as we walked in nature.
Beautiful. And that level of true foundation, I would think that would set you up pretty well for having a balanced perspective moving into the world. I'm not sure, but I would love to hear how it informed your next steps in walking into the world.
I think this is what threw me into a fascination with not only the earth, but also the sky above. And I became very interested in science, what I could observe, what I could smell, what I could see. And that idea of observation was huge. I became a young astronomer. So not only was I watching our planetary being as a living being and my body, part of a larger body that is Earth, and Earth, a part of a larger body that's a part of a solar system and a galaxy, but that there were many galaxies. So when I was looking at the macro, something within me was tracking the micro. And I found there was correspondence to the inner world and the outer world. And that there's a complexity. It cannot be dribbled down into simple ideas or anything that's static.
Mhm.
And our environments indoor are static. We try to control temperature and the aesthetic, and we mow and shape our lawns in certain ways. And we lose touch with the dynamism and the complexity all around us. We lose the ability to live with complexity and to understand that we at the smallest levels are a part of something greater than ourselves. And anytime we refer to myself, what's happening with myself is about how much access do I have to the living intelligence of the planetary being and the greater cosmos.
That is very powerful. I find that when we talk, we like to go in a direction. Our minds were trained that way. We like to go in the direction of one or the other. We want to choose the right direction. And it does, it keeps you from understanding in a more complex way. I find that it also increases our ability to be fearful around things of the unknown and the unwillingness to take risk as well, to see what happens is what I call it. Like you let's just
Yeah.
see what happens. And I'm wanting some of that, what you've been working on, helping people understand the rights of nature. Talk a little bit about how understanding that there are innate rights helps us to orient ourselves in a way that creates more holistic things, projects, solutions, this kind of thing.
Yes. There's a few things that you, in your preamble to the question that you spoke of, that are important, and I want to highlight it because you talked about an awareness of our being preconditioned. And you're right, we are human beings living outside of informal education that used to be well honed in nature, well honed in our recognition that we were a part of nature. And language itself, which contains ideas of our conditioning has an absence of words and concepts that describe and depict and honor the sacred bonds between human beings and all other sentient beings, all the other intelligences.
Mm.
And it has been through these systems that we have lost access. It's like we're sitting on our ass. We're sitting on our access to who we are and what we're a part of. And many people who lived close to the earth were the first to be separated through these systems. So the first thing that happened was demonizing those that lived close to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just insert that because what we've lost is our real identity. And there are many people who suffered the greatest separation who have today the least amount of comfort with nature. And we will remain lost without a pathway, a clear path to repair. And in this place of repair, I am speaking of the natural being state you mentioned. We are natural beings, inherently endowed, intrinsically connected to the larger living earth and cosmos. That is who and what we are, and that is innate and intrinsic to all life. Everyone has that relationship. We walk around today as if there is a way of being separated from life.
Yes.
And yet, the real truth is we're not. So, to the degree we've lost that awareness, is the loss of self, the loss of access, you see. So, I feel when we're talking about rights of nature, it's a step toward returning to the wholeness of being in relationship with life. Now, we lost in the English language the sense of the sacred during the 17th century, actually began even before then, as the industrial age began to take shape after a long period of colonization and the rise of industry. What was once the word nature, capitalized, capital in nature, was diminished to lowercase nature, making it a subject. Objectifying it as separate. And so therefore, extracting from nature was okay. And everything close to nature as separating it as something we could have dominion over and power over. And yet the truth of it is nature enables our very existence. It is just a part of a living, dynamic, universal intelligence. And we're designed to move with creation. We're designed to have access, direct access to the creative intelligence of this living universe. And each one has that moving through in a unique way, as unique as our handprints on our hands, our feet, and the iris of our eyes, as unique as a snowflake. So if we don't have a sense of those bearings, of that true north, that real learning as a little human into being a full, whole human means being in relationship to the natural living world and being able to track what is life generating and life enhancing.
Mhm.
So we've lost our senses around that.
Absolutely. I feel like that phrase in and of itself, what to track what is life inducing and enhancing, the
Mhm.
natural prosperity of a living cycle of nature and being a part of nature is what causes the lack of direction for a lot of people. And so we find our direction in the industrialized success that would name such a thing, right? And then we get lost because it's how can it be fulfilling if the whole of ourselves isn't being met, of our imprint's purpose in this iteration. So go
Yes.
ahead.
I mean, you work with voice, Munifa, and it's about also being able to be fully expressed, to be able to notice, recognize the full spectrum of light,
Mhm.
which is color and sound. And there's no way, you see, as a story maker, a story carrier, a song carrier, that you would have the same access, the same range, the same volume and fullness and depth of expression if you're limited to the very small world that we've created
Mhm.
within the systems that are separate from this living dynamic universe. We're a different song maker, songwriter, singer, song carrier, story maker when we're outdoors in relationship with nature.
This is
The
true.
sources of inspiration and everything is different. We get access because our mind opens up and walks in the unknown, walks in uncertainty, walks in ambiguity without that being a problem. We're not looking for everything to be, contained. We can be in the open innocence, wild unfolding of life being generated, being created. And our creativity is there. Our source is there. Our connection to origins is there. So,
Mhm.
what needs to rise during these times of systems that can no longer sustain and maintain? Systems hitting a wall are giving us the space to rise whole.
True.
It's an exciting time because of that, but we have to be real. We have to see now what has been on our necks. It was, it's been a crazy time for me, I'll have to confess, because I didn't realize how much a part of the body was tracking how unsafe the world has become.
Yes.
It was way too much for me to know the real impact. But we have a nervous system that is always tracking our safety. And George Floyd was a step too far for this body. So we're really at risk for mental illness and being unhinged mentally and losing our way without a way of coming back to self,
Mm.
back to a place where we can stand right in the center of knowing who and what we are. And Yet our strength and our resilience and our ability to move forward with creation depends on our feet on the soil, because this body and the body of the earth are going on this journey together. And the more deeply we can make the connections, restore those bonds to nature, the resilience we need is there.
Absolutely. And that resilience is what keeps us in the way of our true met possibility, right? It's
Yeah.
that ability to tap into our beingness and perceive what is instead of manufacturing the story of what is to be fearful of. We can be present to what truly is and how it's best to respond. We have some amazing people coming in as well to speak on things like this, like moving in response with resilience and the combination of dance and light, color, and so many others who are doing their own little parts by being their unique essences that are connected to this understanding. And it's amazing how each one of those who are able do have some regular practiced like, relationship with the earth and with nature and have been in serious collaboration in their own ways. I'm so looking forward to seeing how people can realize the ability to have that culmination. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of bringing this to the world stage and how people are experiencing the realization, their own aha moments, and in that understanding of the discrepancy and what the need is for repair?
Oh, wow. Just about in every area, I'm seeing it. Again, it's about the conditioning, right?
Mhm.
So, what's happening is some beautiful things are happening. And one of them, I would say, is that those that have the language of the sciences, I'm an engineer, what we're seeing are our fields and disciplines change the more and more we're able to tap into subtle energy,
Mhm.
the more we're able to see what's going on at the nano and at the micro level. We're seeing whole worlds open up. So in the last 20 years, actually, it's been now 30 years because I was around at the beginning of the science of the heart, where we have found a whole neural network in the heart, as well as a neuronal network in the gut.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what we know about the heart now is we could not get to what we know without artists literally taking a model of the heart and spinning it around to see the hidden geometry of the heart.
Mhm.
Because the heart, as well as the shape of the bell, there were just certain things that mathematicians and geometricians couldn't quite solve. Like, what sacred geometry would be connected with the heart? They couldn't quite figure it out. Well,
Mhm.
you couldn't see the subtle forms of its shape until it was spinning in water
Oh, wow.
and was revealed. A man named Frank Chester, an artist, had to add that dimension of movement in order to see that the heart is interdimensional, even in its sacred form. It is a seven shaped form
Mhm.
and has an interdimensional connection to the cube and the other forms already known. Well, that has opened up understanding the heart is not a pump. It actually vortexes, and we should have known it all along
Oh, yeah.
because when we're born, we're 75, 80% water. And water Within water, you see whirlpools, you see the kind of movement of vortexes that are found in galaxies. And
Mm.
this is the nature of how things are moving in our bodies. And the reason we don't know these things is because when medicine studies the body, bodies are dead.
Mhm. Yeah.
They are cadavers. And guess what we don't see? The living fluidity,
Yeah.
movement of the body. But the spine, while it provides structure, it provides flexibility.
Yes.
So the breakthrough that's happening everywhere, whether you're looking at finance, whether you're looking at engineering, you're looking at medicine, doesn't matter. It is moving us into unknown territory where the knowns are no longer holding. They cannot be sustained and maintained because we're learning about this fourth dimension called movement.
Yes. You're speaking
Movement.
my language, man. You're
This is
speaking
why
my language.
somatic work is so powerful. This is why we know now if we want to work with the intelligence of the body, we need to understand the muscle tissues and nervous system that develops in utero because the body heals in the order it was developed in the womb. We need to know
Wow.
embryology. That's
Yeah.
all about the unfolding of the fetus, the growing of it. And we need to know the stages of its development and support the body's ability to heal. And just about everything, we have to break it down to the subtle body that gives us form, that is shaping us. So the more we're getting a view into the invisible, we're learning this is where our greatest access is, not in the seen, but in the unseen.
Yeah.
And what's really happening now as we see breakthrough globally, even I can speak about that in policy, but it's in every discipline. They're having to see that they have to work together because they're blind. If they remain as sectors, they will never get a chance to see the mystery that we're a part of.
That's so interesting. I have seen increased conversation between scientists and philosophers and having that understanding of the artistic brain. And like you said, if you're following the physiology, then left and right brain, if we are dominating on one side as a career, then we need to see the other perspective in order to bring a wholeness to the vision. So these cooperations I can see making all of the difference. I feel like that original separation as you were speaking, that even as you spoke as of the nature being uncapitalized, that to me speaks so many volumes of our misunderstanding or our enforced separation of spirituality and science, and this ability to put it under a microscope in order for us to feel as separate instead of a more intimate introduction and having that whole self meeting our other selves.
Your area that you work in is really speaks to that masculine feminine that you began to speak to. Even in the womb, there's no gender in the beginning. There's a great fluidity until there is this kind of movement toward one or the other. What we have to have going forward is an understanding of the principles of both, and that if you prefer one over the other, or elevate one over the other, you lose direct access to both
Mm.
because they're designed to move together. It's just like I tell people if you're going to deal with the full spectrum of light, you can't leave black out.
Yes. Thank
Black
you.
luminescence is everything. Black
Yeah.
luminescence is where it's all stored, where all the potential is. And if you can't walk with that black light in the dark, in the silence of that deep luminescence, you can experience the rest, the full spectrum of light we see in the rainbow, but we don't see that the white light and the black light is there. I'm saying we have to walk with the full spectrum of light. So what's happening is within us, and we know it's all within our DNA, that large chunks of it is just not expressing. It's unexpressed.
Yes.
And we've lost a great chunk of what we can have access to by losing our connection to nature. So some of what science and other fields are gaining is not just from other fields and disciplines, it's from traditional people
Yes.
who still have some of the wisdom. Right now in the world body, we rely on, in climate change work of which I'm a part, rights of nature, the work of scientists that work around the globe. They have been issuing these joint reports on the state of our world. And in 2017, when we did our work on oceans at the UN, we came out of the process saying we can't just look at evidence-based science alone. There are people that ancient people through time who know more than the science cops to today. So out of that, there was an agreement that the science must include traditional people and their view, indigenous people and their knowledge must be looked at. And it's been invaluable for informing and for us being able to see the earth as a living system, to see the systems as her body, to see what her life support mechanisms are, to understand what a safe operating space for the planetary being is, so we can better understand ourselves. So within many of us, we have our grandmothers and our fathers and the wisdom of their experience, waiting to be awakened, unsealed, to blossom again, to be made available. And it's going to happen. The pressure on life will force that kind of condition that will enable those awakenings. And to do that, then we will have to care for our bodies, come into a relationship of caring for ourselves in community with life. So we know that we are that we are interdependent, that our well-being, mentally and physically, emotionally, is very much dependent upon the well-being of the enabling environment for all life. How could it not be? So what indigenous people know, what every raccoon knows, because the senses are vibrant enough, is they know what real food is. What truly is nourishing. You have a field of GMO corn and a field of corn from seed that hasn't been adulterated. The raccoon goes to the unadulterated seed every single time. It's humans that have lost their senses, lost their mind, and can't tell what's food and what's false. And that will have to change. And the same with water. I don't even want to get into water because it's so dynamic and so relevant for us restoring and repairing. And I feel true reparations is about restoring our relationship so that we can restore and remember who we are and what we're a part of and walk upright, dancing and singing with life.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, yes. The aspects of understanding our nature as water, to me, is, again, speaking straight to the heart of me, because that's, you know, well, you don't know. But I had a revelation and I think it was 2017, around 2017, of reorienting my learning. And this profound woman asked this amazing question: what is your true religion?
Mhm.
And I meditated on it and I thought on it, and I was like, I'm not this esoteric. I can't think of anything. And it's like something in my soul called out, my religion is flow. And
Wow.
that water was such an innate part of me. It was an astrologer, and my Western chart is Cancer, Sun, and Moon, and rising Scorpio. And so I had all this water that I decided was not useful to me when I was living the early part of my life. So to unlock that understanding was a really profound moment for me, right?
Mm.
To feel my own movement of emotion.
Mm.
I think of emotion as energy and motion, right?
Mhm.
And so it was this kind of unlocking, and it allowed me to see the wholeness of myself, my self-expression, because I was like, why am I so obsessed about so many different things? And the uniting principle was this understanding of flow, of movement being the centralizing aspect that allowed us to perceive and work in efficiency. So when you're talking about movement being that fourth dimension, that so reaffirms all of this experience for me. I'm like, hey, if I cry, I cry, but like it's not necessarily about me right now. Because that's how much your words and bringing these things together is helping me perceive the understanding of that movement, also helping us to understand our own self-expression. That's my work as voice, is to be able to experience our own movement with awareness so that we understand the ways in which we create.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on forever, but
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been mentioning the work so much that you're a part of, and that's because part of my full expression in life was through dance and music.
Wow.
It dominated along with my absolute curiosity and head in books, reading widely. Um, my music, which started at 5 years old with a piano and ended up being classically trained in voice, singing opera through and Elizabethan madrigals of all things.
Wow.
But yeah, I had an experience of music taking me places, of music causing the body to feel like a vehicle. When I learned that the real physics of voice can't truly levitate the body, that we get access to that kind of physics that moves the body. And that is because it literally can raise the arc of energy, and the cells can do that. So ultimately, I started looking at the physics of it. And every time that I would design a pole line that's coming out of a power plant, going to a house, I had to pay attention to the dynamic of electrons moving, ensuring that those electrons stayed in sync. Because if they separate and lag behind, it could collapse a whole pole line. And it would do that because of the sound it would create. So I noticed that there were times in which my body went into these ecstatic states when I sang that altered me and caused me to be in locomotion.
Mm.
And you can see how sound does this, the power of sound. In motion is another way that we can move objects and to have an effect on objects. And there's so much more to sound that we will encounter in these coming years that will change everything. But the key about the voice itself is that we can enter into these states where we can restore our, I want to call our tensegrity, our
Oh.
integrity with life. And it's because as the left and right change positions coming into the cranium, the key is this heart here that we have, which is a water wheel. It's like spirals like a galaxy. It gives us access to the subtle energy. And that's the organ of the heart, its role. And when we are moving into higher states of consciousness, it is necessary that the throat open. The throat can't open without an open heart. And it also requires flow. We have to be hydrated in 4-phase water for the sweet soundings of the song of source that's unique to every voice to come in and restore harmony and the original design of each individual. And the mechanism is something we all embody. And you're doing that work. And this is a mantle. So once this happens, not only do we have a mantle at the solar plexus, which was the buckle of Isis, and we can bring in the light rays without distorting them. But then we had to be able to, with the heart, give voice purely to the soul
Yes.
and live a soul forward, soul infused life, which means we're connected to who and what we are a part of.
Mm.
And that the key to that is the voice, the open wheel at the throat as it enters into the cranium. And the cranium just opens like a lotus flower. So these soundings that the ancients were doing was because they understood that you can levitate matter through sound. Those massive megalith stones and dolmens were raised not mechanically or technologically, but through the physics of sound. And there's evidence of that in many
Yes.
cultures. So imagine what it happens when we get our coherent heart, our coherent emotions moving with our mental body and our physical body, our spiritual body, all aligned. What's possible? That's integrity, and that is a deeper tensegrity. So then our word, the spoken word, the sung word, the story we tell has an effect because of its coherence. It cuts through like a laser, and we need that to come together now to create and again give rise to a whole new future where everything has a place. This is not about divide. It's not about separating out now.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many amazing and powerful things that you just said. And yes, I'm very excited for people to be able to experience and delve into this, and hopefully more than one time, because there's a breadth of wisdom and depth of experience and cohesion of the heart that is happening here, that it really brings a light to so many aspects of what it will take for us to be fully self-expressed. And as you can tell, that is where my heart is to
Yeah.
bring that into being for more of us that have a heart for others and the planet. And yes, that is my true wish and my true desire. I can't thank you enough, because I don't believe anybody could bring the level of awareness that you have brought
Oh, wow.
into this space. I mean, I can't imagine it anyway. So I appreciate you 1,000 times over for sharing with us today and being with me.
Thank you so, so much. It was so easy to say yes to you because of the work you're doing, and what I see is yet to come from the work that you're doing. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. All right, you guys, I will see you on the next interview.
You call me a saint, but you know I'm a stranger. All willing and able to do what you want. You think I'm a thinker, but I'm just a singer. All messy and pretty, just making believe. Boy, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Down to obscurity, don't let me ever be this alone. I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all.